Everyone. Oops. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see all of you. We're down to the wire. This is go time, and this will be our last webinar before the election. I'm Jill Nash. I'm the founder of Women for Harris Walls, and we are a grassroots coalition of about 1.2 million women from across the country. Now, for those of you who are new to our group, I want to give you a little bit of background and a little bit of history about us. Today, though, we have a very special speaker, and we are excited. We know so much about Kamala, her policies, and her professional history, but this is our opportunity to get to know a bit more about Kamala, the person. But just by way of background, this group formed in very early 2020. We knew that that election was going to be held in a global pandemic, and we knew that there was no way to do traditional outreach and polling or, whatever. And so we knew that digital was the way to go. We started this group with two women. And we built out all major social media platforms. We also, though, unique to this group, is we also started organizing by state. We recruited women from all different coalitions. So we had K-Hive people, we had Biden people, we had Buttigieg people, we had women from the Warren campaign, and we all came together really to fight for our democracy. By the time the election rolled around in November, we had 750,000 women. We had 31 states organized, and we were the largest phone banking coalition in the campaign. After Biden was declared the winner, we all kind of thought we'd go back to our previous lives. And then January 6th happened. And over these past 4 years, we've kind of stayed in the fight. We've paid special attention to building out our battleground state presence. So for example, today in Pennsylvania, we have 120,000 women. In North Carolina, we have 36,000 women in our group. Florida has 42,000 women, Wisconsin, 27,000. So you get the idea there. And over the past 4 years, we've worked on countless special elections in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania. And when Joe Biden announced that he was stepping down this year, we became Women for Harris and then Women for Harris Waltz. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have 1.2 million women across the country. But in addition to that, we have a partnerships team, and through those efforts, we reach another 1.5 million women. And in addition to that, we have 10,000 virtual volunteers that are being deployed all across the country to battleground states. We have over 400 women on our letters to the editor team, and they're not only writing letters to the editor, but they're doing a fabulous job with op-eds. We have an army of postcard writers. We've done hundreds of thousands of postcards. We have an amazing graphics team, this production team that puts together the webinars. So it's a fairly aggressive outreach operation, and we're so thankful for all of you who participate. I am a native Californian, and I live in the Bay Area. So I have had a unique seat to watch Kamala's career as it's kind of developed and unfolded. First as a San Francisco DA, then as the California AG, then as a state senator or a US senator from our state, and then as vice president. And I've always been impressed with her passion, her values, and her commitment to not just fighting for Californians, but for all Americans. Now, while that resume might be familiar to all of us, there's so much more to Kamala the woman. And that's why we're thrilled to have Tony West joining us today. Tony's her brother-in-law. He's been at her side throughout this whole amazing journey. And he's going to give us some more insight to Kamala, the person. I imagine we're going to hear about what an amazing chef she is and what a great auntie she is and all kinds of other things. So as is our practice, we are so lucky to have Linda Douglas doing the interview today. Linda is a former White House correspondent. She was a member of the Obama administration. She's a corporate communications executive and has just been so tremendous in sharing her skills with this team. So with that, let me turn it over to Linda.
Well, thank you so much, Jill. And I just want to say that I too am a native Californian, and I actually have many friends in common with Kamala. Everybody there is very excited. I mean, they're just beside themselves, basically, as are the women in our group who really are genuine, enthusiastic supporters of Vice President Harris. So first, let's introduce you so we know who you are. So you have been in public service and politics in and out for really most of your career. You've been a presidential appointee in 2 administrations, a veteran of 5 presidential campaigns, and you've been in both the private and the public sectors. You were, and I remember this very well, you were twice confirmed by the US Senate to senior positions in the Department of Justice, including the Associate Attorney General's position in the Obama administration, which is the 3rd highest ranking position in the Justice Department. And you have been a very important advisor to your sister-in-law. And it just warms our hearts, honestly, in today's world to see this close family really working as a family and everybody doing and trusting each other. And it is not the kind of weird, creepy dynamic of the Trump family. This looks like a really happy, wholesome family. Happy children, somebody who cooks, I mean, what more could you want? So first, we want to hear a little bit from you about what you're seeing on the ground. We want to, we're not there, we're watching it on TV. Tell us what you are seeing and hearing on the ground as you go from place to place by yourself, because I understand that you don't always go together, the family fans out, or even more so with Vice President Harris.
Absolutely. Well, first, Linda, thank you very much for the introduction, and Jill, thank you for the invitation to be with you today. It is. I'll tell you, it's been really a great privilege to be able to travel the country on behalf of Kamala and to talk with Americans from all walks of life, doing all kinds of different things about their experiences, about their hopes, about their dreams. And, I always enjoy working on presidential campaigns because it does give you this window into America and to how people are feeling and what the pulse of the nation is. This has been particularly, exhilarating because we're doing it in such a compressed time period. This is unprecedented in terms of how quickly this campaign has come together. We've never seen a campaign, and we've been at this now for almost 14 weeks, and we have less than 2 weeks to go. We've never seen a campaign this short in modern presidential history. And so all of that together and in sort of the unprecedented way in which it came about, all of it has been, quite exhilarating. None of us have had time, frankly, to reflect on it. We've just kept sprinting and going and going and going. But I'll tell you, on the ground, there is an energy and an excitement and an engagement that I really have not seen. I mean, as you mentioned, Linda, I've been in 5 presidential campaigns, and including 2008, which was Barack Obama's first campaign. And I up to that point, I had never been involved in a presidential election that had that much energy on the ground, that much excitement, until this one. President Biden called my sister-in-law on July 21st. That was a Sunday, and told her that he would not be at the top of the ticket. And by that Wednesday, we had our first rally in Milwaukee, and I flew with her to that auditorium. And I remember walking into that auditorium and feeling literally like a wall of excitement and enthusiasm that was was definitely reminiscent of 2008, but there was something even different about it. There was just a raw joy is the only way I can explain it that you felt. And at every rally since, including I wasn't at the one last night with Bruce Springsteen and President Obama, but I know, with 23,000 people, I did talk with her this morning, and I mean, she talked about how just the excitement and the energy is palpable out there. So what I'm seeing on the ground is that. What I'm also seeing on the ground is a level of engagement. I mean, people are engaged in this election. I do believe people know what the stakes are. And, I see it in the conversations I'm having. I met a young man in Phoenix, Arizona earlier this week. And, he said, listen, I think it's going to be a long time before I have kids, but I'm going to vote for the kids that I want to have someday because it's that important. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and I remember kind of traveling to on my way to an event as part of the motorcade, and we saw two little girls holding a handmade sign as we passed by, and the sign said, "Vote as if your daughter's rights depend on it." I mean, just again, the level of engagement and the fact that people know what's at stake, you feel that, and I feel it in every engagement that I have out there.
Mm. Well, that's very exciting and that's reassuring. And those are the kinds of things that we want to hear that are going on in the field. Although we're not at the rallies, we're out knocking on doors. As Jill said, we want to hear a little bit more about your sister-in-law and sort of what she's like. And I think one of the things that I mean, first of all, she's pretty good at showing herself, which is really, one of her best qualities. I mean, you really get a sense that you would know what she's like just from watching her on the stage, which is really gratifying because there's a nice authenticity there that is extremely important for people to trust their leaders. But how would you describe sort of the kind of person she is and what motivates her? I mean, you've seen her as a prosecutor. She
Hmm.
was a very feisty senator. And yet she doesn't seem to take herself too seriously. But there's somebody serious in there. Can you kind of paint a picture, if this is a specific enough question, of what she's like as a person in her world and in her profession?
Yeah, it's interesting. She is very much a what you see is what you get kind of person. And so, the person you see on the stump, the person you see in these engagements, you are seeing who she really is. And now the country's been able to see different sides of that, right? I mean, you just, as you said, Linda, you saw her as the prosecutor, and the way that she, questioned Sessions, Attorney General Sessions and Brett Kavanaugh, she can get into that prosecutorial mode sometimes when she's either talking to staff or even family members if we're having, you know, conversations about stuff. But you can also see, very much particularly when she's talking to children or young people, you immediately see how, her eyes will light up and she sees very much both I think the impact that she has on young people, but how important it is for them to have leaders that they can look up to. And she takes that very, very seriously. I don't know if you saw the town hall she did the other night.
Yeah, I did.
But what I one of the things I told her this morning is I actually thought the best part of that town hall came after the town hall,
Right, right,
because
right.
there was this moment where she had an interaction with a gentleman who was an undecided voter, who was pro-life,
Mhm.
and the two of them began to have a conversation. And the microphones picked it up, and she didn't know. She told me she said I had no idea that the microphones were on or were picking this up. But that was the real her. I mean, she's having this conversation. It's a very thoughtful exchange that
Mhm.
she's having with an individual who clearly has a different position on reproductive freedom than she does, but they're having a civil conversation in which she's listening to his point of view. She's sharing her point of view, and the two of them are having like a normal conversation. You know, it's not this yelling match. It's not this "you're wrong, I'm right." It's the kind of discourse that we ought to have in this country, and that is also very much authentic her. I mean, that is just, you know, when you think about the way she engages with people, you think about the conversation she has, it's very much that. The other thing about her is, you know, she has always been very much a protector. She's like that with my wife, with her younger sister Maya. She's like that with her family. Um, and and you know, I mean, you know, there was a time in her life where a friend of hers in high school, she learned was being sexually molested by her stepfather, and she immediately said, "Hey, listen, you've got to come stay with us for a while." And she, you know, that classmate lived with Maya and Mother Harris, like my mother-in-law used to call her Mother Harris. Mother Harris, and you know, for a period of time to get her out of that situation. That's her instinct. Her instinct is very much to protect. The other thing about her is she will always stand up to a bully. And so I think what we're seeing play out on the national stage, what you saw in the debate, is very indicative of this instinct to, you know, she's never met a bully she won't stand up to. She's never met a person in need that she won't stand up for. And
Mhm.
that is very much just her ethos as she goes through life. And so what you're seeing, you are seeing, you know, the authentic her and all of these different facets and venues and iterations as we go through the campaign.
So what would she be like as the leader? I mean, I could ask you, what is she like as a leader, but
Yeah.
what can we imagine she would be like as the leader of the free world, and certainly the leader of the United States? Like, by that I mean, how does she choose the people around her, the ones who, you know, are going to be delegated, you know, a very, very important authority and responsibility? How does she make decisions? Can you paint a picture of her as a leader?
Sure. She's very much the kind of leader that likes to hear different perspectives around the table before making a decision. And this is, I think, a critical reason why she's been successful in her career, because she has always had a very diverse decision-making table that has helped her to reach the best decisions. And, you know, it's not, there's no, I don't think it's a mistake, for instance, that she is leading the most diverse, broadest political coalition that we've seen in modern times, that spans, you know, AOC and Elizabeth Warren on the left to Liz and Dick Cheney on the right.
Mhm.
And that's not an accident, because when she's in these positions, she makes it a point to sort of seek out the point of view or the perspective that you may not always hear.
Mhm.
I think, you know, when she's in the conversations, I know as vice president, when she's been in these conversations with the president, she has often seen her role as representing the voice that you might not always hear, that might not be the conventional wisdom, that might be something she's heard on the road that she wants to make sure is being heard in the room.
Mhm.
And so that has been the way that she has led. I mean, you know, she's there. There's a reason why she said, you know, I want a Republican in the cabinet.
Mhm.
There's a reason why she approaches a lot of these policy issues with a very clear from a very clear set of values, with a very clear objective, what she wants to accomplish. But how we get there is something she wants a lot of people to be able to weigh in on, because she wants to find the best path or the best idea, not necessarily, you know, a particular ideology or a particular prescribed doctrinaire, point of view.
Mhm.
She's a very pragmatic, practical leader. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of that comes from the fact that she really came of political age as the San Francisco district attorney. And anyone who's been in politics at the local level understands that, you know, your whole job is to solve problems. You know, your job is not to kind of try to figure out, the partisan divide or the political games. One of the things she has said is that as a prosecutor, she never asked a victim or a witness if they were a Democrat or Republican. She only asked if they were okay, because she's trying to solve problems. And so she brings that perspective and that, I would say, that bent, that preference to really wanting to solve the problem, whether the idea or the solution comes from one end of the political spectrum or the other. She wants to make sure that she's doing the best that she can to solve problems for the American people.
So I was, as Jill mentioned, I was a political reporter in Washington for many years, and I've seen many presidents and vice presidents on the campaign, and also, knew about their interactions in the White House. And it's mostly a marriage of convenience. It's rare that they form a friendship. Although I would say that President Obama and Vice President Biden really did have a lot of trust, which was quite unusual. It was a rather exceptional relationship. Tell us about your sister-in-law's relationship with Tim Walz. What is that like when the two of them are together?
It's fun. It really is fun. I will tell you, I was part of the small group that did a lot of the VP vetting and pre-interviews, and one of the things that became very apparent to me very quickly is early in that process, I just knew the two of them would get along. This is before there were any decisions about who it would actually be. I could just see in my head just where the two of them would mesh, and it would be joyful. It would be fun. And sure enough, as they have been spending time together, and you can see it on the road, they just enjoy hanging out together. Now, the campaign is such that they actually don't spend as much time as I'm sure they'd like actually on the road together, because we're all trying to divide and conquer. And so we've got him going to different places, and then we have her going. But but that chemistry that you see, that partnership, that's quite genuine. And and when you are with them, like the convention was a lot of fun because we were all together. And it's, he's such a down to earth guy. I think the thing that's, refreshing about her as a public servant is she is she's so not interested in the political games and the gamesmanship. She is really about, hey, look, how do we solve these problems together, right? And there's a reason why she talks about the importance of unity over division and really kind of focusing on those things we share in common. And Governor Walz, I mean, this is a guy who he's not afraid to he's just very down to earth. I mean, one of the things that he told us in the vetting, which I loved, was he said, there's one, we had gone through a bunch of questions, and sort of at one point he goes, now there's one thing I got to tell you guys, that you just need to know about me. And we're like, well, what's the issue? And he said, I've never used a teleprompter. I've never used a teleprompter, and I don't know how to use a teleprompter. And I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. I just talk off the cuff. I just kind of, and I was like, that's a plus. That's a big plus.
Yeah.
We can teach you how to use it. We can teach you how to use a teleprompter. Don't worry about that. But he's a very authentic, very visceral kind of politician who just, he feels it, and he says what he believes, and it's authentic, and he's not afraid of data that can lead him to a different conclusion. I think about his position on gun rights, for instance, and how he, in the face of data and in the face of experience, changed his position on gun rights. He still obviously supports the Second Amendment, and he still owns a gun, and he still believes in, but understanding that there are some common sense, safety focused solutions that we can implement that are supported by the vast majority of gun owners. That's a position that he changed. And so, you want public servants in office, I think, to be able to, um, lead with values, but also realize that it's okay to change your position in the face of data and facts which tell you that perhaps you need to reconsider something. That's a sign of growth and a sign of leadership, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a really important quality, to be open-minded to other ideas. And not all presidents do that because they want to be seen as always right on the issue. So that's a very interesting insight, and about him as well. So what is she hearing herself from voters on the road? What are they asking her about? What kinds of things are on their minds? I mean, she's rolled out some very interesting policies, very important. I think, some of us wish we heard more about those policies. The mainstream media hasn't been giving them quite as much attention as they should. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked a lot amongst ourselves as women about the importance of the proposal to have Medicare cover in-home healthcare, because the
Exactly.
sandwich generation is a very big generation. It's several generations. But what are people asking her about when she's on a rope line and they get a chance to ask her a question?
Linda, that's a perfect example of something that she has heard over and over again from voters, is this, idea of, look, I'm raising my family. I'm now taking care of an aging parent, or parents, and I'm just feeling squeezed. That plus, how do I figure out childcare? So that policy came out of those kinds of conversations.
Hmm.
Other parts of the policy have also come from real conversations she's had on the rope line or in these roundtables or town halls. So, for instance, extending the child tax credit, $6,000 in the first year of a child's life to pay for things like, you know, bassinets and cribs and strollers and, baby formula and all the things that all of a sudden you're hit with as a new parent in many cases. But, extending that child tax credit and expanding it. Um, the whole idea of giving the middle class a tax cut, because there's been almost a century's worth of economic data that tells us if we invest in the middle class and we invest in middle class job creation, that's the best way to grow our economy. And so she's had a whole economic policy called the Opportunity Agenda, or the Opportunity Economy, excuse me, which is completely focused on growing and investing in the middle class and getting people to a place where they not just have economic security to get by, but that they can actually get ahead in the middle class. That comes very much from these conversations that she's been having with voters, as well as her own experience growing up as a middle class kid in Oakland, California. Um, she's talked a lot about her commitment to small business, and there's a whole part of her economic plan which is focused on helping to support small businesses as they are formed, as well as helping them to scale and expand and be successful. And so she's talked a lot about expanding the small business creation tax credit from $5,000 to $50,000. That's because the average cost to start a small business in our country is $40,000. And so to really be able to cover that in a meaningful way means that we're going to be able to create more small businesses in our country. And if we do that, then we will create more jobs, because small businesses account for 65% of job creation in this country. And so if you support small businesses, then you're going to support job creation, particularly job creation in the middle class. You're going to be able to grow our economy. And so there are things like that which are grounded in the real conversation she's had. $35 insulin. That's another one where, as part of the Biden-Harris administration, they were able to work with the pharmaceutical industry to cap insulin at $35 a month for seniors. She wants to expand that to everybody, because what she has been hearing is, listen, this has been great for, my grandma, but guess what? People are coming down with diabetes at younger and younger ages, and we need to find ways to expand not just that, but other ways for for families to be able to afford drugs and medicine to help keep their families healthy. And so, there's a whole bunch of policy that she has put forward, which reflects the experiences that she's had growing up, but importantly, what she has been hearing, not just as a presidential candidate, because she's actually been out there, convening small businesses, convening different constituency groups over the last 3.5 years. So this really does reflect a lot of what she has heard as vice president over the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's interesting that very exciting proposal about Medicare and home health care came from conversations with voters. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really important. So we promised we wanted to ask you a few personal questions about her, so we know a little bit more about her. One of the hardest things for a presidential candidate to do is keep up a health routine while you're on the road.
Yeah,
And I mean, I have seen candidates, because I covered a lot of presidential campaigns. They gained a lot of weight. They don't fit in their suits anymore, or the jacket doesn't match the pants anymore, or they have coffee on their ties. And
right.
George W. Bush used to take his pillow with him wherever he went, his pillow from home. And Obama always wanted to have an elliptical in the hotel so he could do his elliptical. She looks great. Like, what is she doing to keep herself in a kind of a healthy physical state as well as mental state?
Diet and exercise, super important. What she does every morning, she does the elliptical. Um, I'm chuckling to myself today because one thing she said to me this morning was, "What level did you do the elliptical at?" Because we have a little bit of a competition going on. She does it at a level 10. Uh,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, no, she's actually quite good at it. But she does the elliptical every morning, and she also will then follow it up with some treadmill work. But she's very, very disciplined about working out every morning, and yeah, they'll have the elliptical in her hotel room as well, so that she can make sure she's getting that workout in. And then I mean, she eats well. She's it's probably not surprising because she is a really, really good cook. But she makes sure that she's eating well, and she's doesn't she doesn't have the sweet tooth that I have, for instance. And so whenever there's candy in the house, she's not eating it. I am, but
So, what about, does she have any like odd quirks that will become very, very famous if she is president of the United States, which we all believe that she will be? I mean, Ronald Reagan always had jelly beans with him, and President Obama, you may remember this from the campaign, had, I think it was like 9 almonds. He ate 9 almonds every day.
yeah.
And there was a certain kind of honesty or whatever it was. In addition to food, what quirk does she have that we're all going to chuckle about once we get to know our new president well?
Well, I don't know if the American people are going to be able to see this as much as we see it in her life, the people in her life who we, see her quite often. But the thing that it cracks me up, it cracks Doug up, I mean, all of us, is will be, I mean, this is, she'll be preparing for a presidential debate, right? It's clear that we're all like thinking about this, and we're all focused on, this thing, or her speech at the convention, right? And we'll be in a room, and all of a sudden she'll be like, "Did you eat today? What did you eat? Wait, make sure that's not enough. You need to get done. I mean, she'll go into full on Auntie Kamala mode. And it's hilarious because it will happen. You'll be thinking to yourself, don't you have something more important instead of worrying about what I'm eating or what I'm doing? Don't you have something more important to think about? But that is very much, it is a funny thing about her. She in her head, and in some ways, I think it may even help her to focus on the big important things, is she's not forgetting like these little details about the people she loves in her life, right? And she's always kind of in that kind of caretaker mode. But it's a funny thing because it will come out at the times when you would think she would be only thinking about herself or only thinking about this big thing. All of a sudden she's, making sure, are you okay? Wait, do you have enough? This happens all the time, all the time.
So, final question, which is about Donald Trump, and then I think rather than ask you for your call to action, which I promise I'm going to do, we have some good questions
Oh, good.
coming from the audience that I want to ask you about. But I want to ask you one more thing. So, obviously Donald Trump is, I mean, I'm going to refrain from using any particular adjectives, but certainly we know that he's lying. And we certainly know that he's proposing horrifying things. And we know he's talking about deportation camps and revenge against people who argue with him and disagree with him, and pulling the licenses of networks that do bad stories about him, and so on and so forth. And also, he's very crude. He's been crude. He's been using vulgarities in audiences with people with their children and so forth. Why do you think he's still doing as well as he is?
It's a really good question. And it is true that he is enjoying the highest favorability ratings of his entire career right now. Um, I, I don't know if I have a good answer to this because I am quite biased and I am seeing it from a very particular perspective. All I can say is, you know, uh, somebody said, I heard somebody say that this election is very much a test of the American people, and whether or not, when we say we believe in the Constitution and the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, or we believe in this idea of patriotism and the principles and values that go along with that, whether or not we really have internalized them, or whether it's been too long, right? Since we've had such a major testing of that fabric
Mhm.
that we forget. And you talk to someone like in my parents' generation, where they lived through Jim Crow and lived through the civil rights movement, and they have a living, visceral memory of what it's like to be less than full citizens. Most Americans who are voting today don't have that lived experience, or don't have that living memory. And so a lot of what we talk about is hypothetical to them. And so, part of this might simply be that, you know, if you think about the presidential elections since Franklin Roosevelt, almost every generation of voter had some living memory of what it was like to either live through the Great Depression and know the difference that government can make in people's individuals' lives, or lived through World War II and knew what it was like to sacrifice for your country. Lived through the draft, lived through the civil rights movement, lived through Vietnam, understood through some lived experience that either you had or someone directly connected with you had, which reminded you of the importance of, this idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is codified in our Constitution from the Declaration of Independence. Everyone had like some kind of personal experience with that. This is, I think, the first time in history where that's not true.
Mhm.
And you have like a lot of Americans who are voting for whom this is either history
Mhm.
or hypothetical. And that's the only way that I can explain it, to be honest with you, Linda.
Well, that is a very astute analysis. I mean, the boomers who've been running this country for, since, well, forever, really don't understand how generations younger than they are have not had the same lived experiences that you're talking about. And so whatever comes out of his mouth may just sound like, hot air. They don't understand that he actually means it. So we have a couple of questions that I want to ask you because they reflect some things that we've actually been hearing. That
Mm.
I was gonna ask you about this earlier, but our members of the audience are already asking these questions because we're hearing this on the ground in Pennsylvania as well. So the first one is more or less, that people who are going door to door people who are living in their communities, Democrats who want to vote for Vice President Harris, are feeling some frustration that she's not talking more about immigration,
Mm,
because it seems to be Donald Trump, thanks to his really hateful rhetoric, has nevertheless made this the issue all of a sudden. And so we've heard, and our person asking a question here is hearing this in her own conversations, that
mm.
they wish that she was taking this on a little bit more aggressively in her conversations in these last several days, where it seems to be a determinative issue for a lot of voters. What about that? Why, I mean, I understand you don't want Donald Trump to tell you what to talk about. Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
should she be talking a little bit more about immigration, given that these concerns are building, whether they're rational or not?
Yeah, and and I think, we've actually heard that there is interest in talking about immigration, and even more so the economy.
Mhm.
And I think for her, so she does talk about immigration. I think the question is, are you talking about it in a way that breaks through? And because I will say that there isn't a rally or a town hall. I mean, she talked about it a lot, on the CNN town hall. There isn't an interview where she doesn't talk about this issue. And the way she usually talks about it is she frames it in her experience as California Attorney General, where she had to deal with the border and immigration. She talks about it in terms of acknowledging the reality that we have a broken immigration system, have had one broken immigration system for many decades now, and then talks about it in terms of what she would do as president. And what she would do as president is she would address border security, because one of the sad realities about our politics is immigration has become politicized, and particularly border security has become sort of the symptom of that politicization. And so if you're able to get your arms around border security and address it in a bipartisan way and take it off the table, it opens up the opportunity to begin to have conversations about, okay, how do we take a comprehensive bipartisan approach to all of the other parts of our immigration system. But first, getting border security, resolved is probably the first step in doing that. Which is why she said she would sign this bipartisan border bill that had great bipartisan support, and was on its way to passage until Donald Trump called some folks in the House and Senate and said kill it, because he'd rather run on this problem as opposed to solve this problem. And so, she said that, bring that border security bill back. I'll sign it as president. Look, and that's it's a perfect bipartisan bill in the sense that it includes compromises, and it includes things that, I'm sure a lot of people would rather not have or don't like, but it has a lot of stuff that, a lot of people do like. And just like any other good piece of governance that comes out of our process, it's going to be a compromise. And in this case, it's a bipartisan compromise, which is much needed. And so, she's talked about that. I do think that you got to be one of the things we have to be careful about, I think, and I know she feels this, is how we talk about immigration is really important. How our leaders talk about immigration is really important. And it will always be easier to break through on immigration if you're talking about it from a frame of vilifying people, right? Talking about the importance of bipartisan action on border security is simply not going to get as many clicks as they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats,
Mhm.
eating the pets, right? And so it's simply not gonna, people just, it's not gonna be the headline, right?
Yeah.
And so the way she has talked about the issue has been from a framework of how do we solve the issue in a bipartisan way. The way she's talked about immigration is with an acknowledgement that immigrants are, as Ronald Reagan believed, the source of America's greatness.
Mhm.
And we have to have an inclusive society and an inclusive economy that includes them and is able to not only include them, but make them a part of the fabric of our country, because that will make us stronger. And that is the way she thinks about it. That is the way she talks about it. But you know, it simply will not command the same type of attention as pointing fingers at
Mhm.
at people and trying to, essentially assign blame to folks, because that is, it's always easier to access anger than it is to access grace or calm or forgiveness.
Yeah, boy, it's very frustrating. The other question we got from one of our audience members, and we also have been hearing this from the door-to-door experiences that our canvassers are having. Um, some people are complaining that they're tired of hearing about Trump.
Mhm.
That, she's begun to talk about Trump a lot, and President Obama is also talking about Trump a lot. And the hope is that she'll be talking more about what she would do as president. Is that a conversation that's going on inside the campaign? I mean, I know you can't tell us your big secrets of campaign strategy, but this is again a question from an audience member, and it's exactly the same thing that our some of our canvassers are hearing.
Well, certainly you'll hear in what they call the closing argument, which will be the last kinds of, things that she talks about, and you'll hear it over the last course of the week before Election Day, is she will talk about those uplifting themes, those uplifting messages. She'll talk about the joy. You'll see a lot of that. And it'll be a very affirmative message, because ultimately, as Americans, that's what we want and what we need is we need aspiration in our politics and our civil discourse. And I think you will hear that from her. You will still hear, though, this contrast. And the reason you'll hear it, it's actually a good thing that you're telling me that people are saying, I'm sick of hearing from Trump. One of the difficulties that we've had in this campaign is people forgot how chaotic the Trump years were. People forgot, what it felt like to wake up every day and to not want to look at your phone, to check out or not check the news, but to check out because you were just so exhausted with the Trump years. It's important to remind people of that, because that helps to sharpen the contrast and helps people to understand what's both at stake and what the choice is. Now, like I said, you won't hear her talk about Trump in the same way, with the same frequency all the way to the end of this campaign. But up to this point, it has been important, and a lot of the data was telling us this, that people had just forgotten what a Trump presidency was like. And so we needed to remind people who he is.
Yeah, and she's doing a very good job of that. And she also does it, she doesn't do it like he does. I mean, there's
Right.
just not that nasty edge. So the call to action, we always ask our guests to give us a sort of a what should we be doing in these last several days?
Look, we've got 11 days to go. We've got 11 days to organize, to knock on doors, to canvass, to tell your friends and your family to get out there and to vote. And these 11 days, I truly believe, can determine the course of the next 40 years, because what's at stake is um, not just these big questions of democracy. What's at stake is not just these economic questions or what the policy is going to look like. What's at stake is the Supreme Court, and we know how the Supreme Court can impact our individual lives. The next president is probably going to get at least three, probably four appointments to the Supreme Court. And those justices will determine the quality and the shape of our lives for decades to come, regardless of who the president is. And so we want whoever is in the White House to be able to make those judgments and decisions in a way that reflects what the people's sentiments are, as opposed to some ideological plan like Project 2025. And so, look, I think you all know that my sister-in-law is someone who understands that it's much more important for us to look for ways to bridge the divide as opposed to broaden it. It's much more important for us to, remember that great leaders lift people up, they don't tear folks down. And the thing about Kamala is she has always understood, particularly being the child of immigrants. She's always understood that what's so unique about our country is that we're not we're not bound together by, by language or by ethnicity or religion, like a lot of countries are. We're bound together by this idea that we talked about earlier, Linda, this idea that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that belongs to each of us, that's an aspiration that belongs to all of us, regardless of what our origin story is, regardless of the language our grandmother spoke. And so, trying to make real that idea, which I think we would all want to lay claim to, trying to make sure that that is actually a reality, and we have a country and a government that's trying to actualize that every single day. That's a choice. Democracy is a choice. It's not guaranteed. It's something that we have to continue to strive for and work for and continue to renew. And so for us, we have 11 days to do just that. We have 11 days again to kind of get out there and really fight for the country we deserve. And this election is so close. It is so close. I cannot overestimate or overemphasize that everything you do in the next 11 days to help my sister-in-law win this election, it will matter. It will truly matter. It is that close in each of the 7 battleground states. And, forget what the polls are telling you. This person's up by a point, this person's down by a point. The data that we see, which I trust a lot more than these public polls, literally says this is a game of inches. So every single thing you do will matter. And so I listen, I think we can do this. I know we can do it, and I believe we will do it. But we're going to have to really fight over the next 11 days to get it done.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And that's exactly what we all believe. I think we really understand the power of an individual who's going to volunteer time and brain power and everything else that you can do. So that's very important for us to hear, especially from you. And it's lovely to see how close, as I said before, your family is. That speaks very, very well of the woman we hope and believe will be our next president. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be with you. And thank you. And thank you, Jill.
Thank you. So just in wrapping up, thank you, Linda. For all of you, I basically accosted Tony on a street in New York. And we so appreciate you coming in and speaking to us. A couple of thoughts as we close. When Kamala was named as the vice presidential nominee, our refrain, Tony, was we have her back. And we have a rapid response operation. And anytime people were slinging mud, we were all over it. And we all look forward to having her back as Madam President. As you said, we have 11 days to go. And to remind everyone of Michelle Obama at the convention, who was spectacular, do something. So I'm going to go to Nevada for the next week and do get out the vote. And as you said, each one of us on this call, each one of us in this group can do something. And Tony, you're from the Bay Area. One of the mottos of the Warriors is strength in numbers. So we have 1.2 million women. We have another 1.5 million through our partnerships. If we just each delivered 2 votes, game over. We've got it. And so we each of us has to do something. We are averaging about 240 mobilizations a week. So I would encourage all of you to visit womenforharris.org, our website, And we have mobilized links. We have all kinds of different ways for you to get involved. So that's an easy reference for all of you. So I'd encourage you to kind of use that as your North Star over the next 11 days. If you have a couple extra hours, it's very easy to jump in and jump out. So with that, I want to thank Linda, who has just, as I said, been here with us for 4 years and is always such a great interviewer. The production team, Lana, Shannon, Sandy, you do amazing work. Our next webinar will be after the election. And I look forward to celebrating and then charting our course as we have her back. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And we will be in touch after the election, but busy between now and the election. So thank you so much, Tony. Keep up the great work, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.